Hello Stranger Things fans, Bored now back with you on this video. I return to the world of the Upside Down and it is going to be my review of Stranger Things 2, Chapter 2, Trick or Treat Freak. So this is obviously set on Halloween night, or the day of Halloween, which was set up in the last episode, and we really get some fun antics in this episode from the gang, and they do a lot of fun stuff with the night of Halloween, including, of course, one of the most iconic images of the whole show is Dustin, Lucas, Mike and Will all dressed up as Ghostbusters, and we see them get together and dress up, get in their costumes. They even go to school in those outfits, not realising that no one else at school is dressed up for Halloween, so sort of embarrassing. But we get a lot of fun and a lot of antics and a very eventful Halloween night itself, which I'll talk more about. And again, I enjoyed this episode. This season definitely gets off to a bit of a slow start, but it doesn't matter too much because I'm enjoying the character stuff, and this definitely builds on what we saw in the first episode. It's a big episode for Elle, this one I would say, 11, and I think one of the reasons is because we start seeing her longing to have her old life back, longing to reconnect with Mike and the gang, and also longing to be a human, longing to be more like a human, live more like a human. I think that's her searching for a bit more humanity is a big theme in this episode, which I guess is why it's sort of so perfect and it's set on Halloween night, because she just wants to be part of usual stuff. She wants to be a normal, teenage girl or preteen girl and get up to mistress and fun on Halloween. But the episode actually starts with a flashback which basically explains what happened to her on the night of the finale of season 1, where it appeared as though she'd been sacrificed herself, so she was dead. So we see her in the Upside Down world shouting for Mike. She struggles and at one point sees a hole in the wall in the classroom, and she screams out of it, but she finds a way through and she sort of punches through, and we saw her fist goes through a bunch of goo, which I like, another good effect. So she does escape and she comes out of the school, and her immediate instinct is to head to Mike's house, which she does, but then she sees obviously the CIA there. They're questioning Mike and his family. Now, for the sake of Mike's parents, Karen and Ted, that they're doing a cover story that it's to do with Russians and what have you. And at the same time, when they talk to Mike, that they're saying, if you know anything, you need to tell us where she is. And Mike's I don't know where she is and I wouldn't tell you even if I did, which I love. But what it leads to is that Elle sees just how much danger she would put Mike and the gang in if she did return to their lives. And so it's at that point where she decides to back off. She goes to hide in the woods, and that explains why she's obviously been in hiding, why she's been with Hopper. Now, obviously, I think for some, this flashback maybe is one of those where it's she's just explaining why she's still alive, that sort of thing. But it's actually done quite well, and it's a pretty strong episode for Elle, a pretty important episode, because when Hopper comes back, a fun moment. There's some fun moments here where they use Halloween as a set piece, because she jumps out of nowhere and gives Hopper a right old fright where she's dressed in the ghost outfit, and it scares him. But the whole thing is that she says to him, look, no one can tell who I am. Can I go out on Halloween? Can I, go trick-or-treating? And obviously Hopper's not going to go for it, even though she is under a ghost hood. He's no, it's too risky. And he actually teaches her a new word, which is compromise. And the compromise is, and he says he'll come home early, and when he gets home he'll bring some horror movies and they can sit, eat candy and yeah, they can watch the whole, and that's the compromise. But I do like this continuing like development of Elle and her world, where Hopper is like teaching her words, using it in an example, and you get a real father and daughter type vibe in this episode between them. So we see Elle start to pick up new words. She starts picking up things from the TV, like she sees a trailer for Terminator, which of course in '84 was a new release. So she's constantly learning stuff, but gets caught up in his work and forgets about he promised her to be home, and they celebrate Halloween together because the pumpkin patch thing continues. But then there's something a little bit more to it than just kids like mucking about. Hopper this trail, and it leads to some goo once again. But it's at that point, not too long after that, then he realises then he sort of stood Elle up. He's late, so he rushes back, and she's in her room, and sort of, yeah, he's out there on his own eating the candy. And Elle does this experiment thing where she's continuing to try to contact Mike, and she thinks she gets like a psychic link to him, like she actually sees him like responding, but it sort of turns out to be in her head. But that's the whole deal. Then she is imagining and craving for that life back. She wants to reconnect with Mike and to start living like a normal girl again, which obviously is going to be very difficult. So I think it is a big episode for Elle in trying to get some sort of normal life. Antics of Halloween night itself and with the gang, and also what happens with Nancy, Steve and Jonathan. But there's only one place to start, and that is with the MVP of the episode, and it's for just one scene, and that is Max herself, who we get to learn a bit more about. Earlier on in the day, she seemed very unimpressed with Lucas and Dustin and their constant like pestering and their costumes. She was sarcastic, calling them stalkers. And Max is just so cool, so unimpressed, but just has this real hip vibe. But she steals the episode in this iconic classic scene.
Holy shit! You should have seen the look on your faces. And you? Who screams like that? You sound like a little girl.
Boom! Max is frigging Michael Myers on Halloween night. She steals the show. Absolutely brilliant. And I'm just enjoying the hell out of Sadie Sink in this show. She's so deadpan in her scenes with the gang. And she takes charge in that. And such a cool outfit. She goes trick-or-treating with them, which Mike isn't too thrilled with. She's worried, then she's sort of mustering in on their sort of party. Obviously Dustin and Lucas are more down because they've like got the hots for her, and they continue trying to impress her, and it's some fun scenes. It also shows that Max is actually quite laid back and sympathetic, that she isn't just this sort of upper self. She's got like an attitude, but she is very laid back with it, and quite cool to be around. Now, I'll stick with Max for a minute because I think one of the weaker moments in the episode is the stuff with her and her brother Billy, which we get another insight to him and just what an arsehole he is. But obviously he drives her back and forth from school, and he rags on her because she's late apparently, but he's just really mean and grumpy, and he calls like the town of Hawkins like cow shit. It smells like cow shit, which is kind of funny, but he's just very bullying, and he is intimidating, but he's such a weird character, Billy. I think me and Rachel talked a bit about it, and we're going to talk more about him because his whole image is like this over-the-top sort of bad boy that all the girls seem to like, but there's something very cheesy about him, and yet at the same time he's meant to be like this punky, like mean sort of character. So I'll talk more about him as the season goes on. Now, the scene itself when he's driving Max home is like really weird, and he's kind of trying to get her to say it's your fault then we're in this hellhole. And Max is like more, well, we're here now, let's just deal with it. But as the scene goes on, he nearly runs over our boy. At the point, it's like, oh, well, you don't know them, Max, so this isn't going to matter sort of thing. he's a weird character, Billy. I think we'll have to talk more about him later, but we get a bit more of him because he's at the party, like the party that Nancy and Steve end up going to, hanging out with like these other gang of boys, and he's again just very OTT in the scene. He's hanging around with a couple who are like dressed as like Cobra Kai members, but I'm sort of thinking, he's only been in town 5 minutes. How the hell has he already met these people? Because it does appear that they know each other and they're hanging out in a gang. I don't know if it's just like a teenage party thing, but I guess he's the bad boy. That's his whole thing. Steve, Nancy, and their stuff, because they reluctantly go to this party. Nancy, her thing in this episode is that she's still thinking about Barb, and she's still thinking about Barb's parents and concerned that they're selling the house. And she says to Steve in this that she really wants to tell them the truth. And he, quite rightly, I think he's right to say this, that then we can't, because it's just too dangerous. If it got out, you know, we could go to jail, we could be in trouble, our family could be in trouble. And I think Steve's right, but you can also see Nancy's frustration. But Steve talks her into going to the party because he's like, well, let's just act like stupid teenagers, put our stupid costumes on that we've spent months making, and just act like normal teens for one night. And of course, things don't go on because of course drama, and Nancy still very much has the Barb thing. And it's sort of noticeable that the party is like, who are these freaks? What the hell are they doing? It's sort of funny to see now Steve, who was kind of one of the popular and quote-unquote cool kids a year ago, now feeling out of place at this typically fratty teen sort of Halloween party. But yeah, they are out of place. Nancy gets absolutely plastered. Steve says that's enough, but they get into an awkward sort of argument, and Nancy gets punched all down her, and things go to the bathroom, where we find out Nancy's favourite word in the whole world, which is
bullshit.
Such great acting from Natalia Dyer in that scene. She must have had a blast acting all drunk and over the top and just saying bullshit all the time. It's a funny little scene. It's obviously done to force like drama between her and Steve, but you know what? I'm going to defend it because it actually does feel quite natural. It feels like the way it plays out is quite a realistic sort of fight you might have at like a party when, you know, the Nancy character who doesn't typically drink goes a bit overboard and gets drunk just because she's very upset and stroppy about the tension between them over the whole Barb thing. And, you know, in that bathroom scene, it's very awkward, and she says things maybe she doesn't mean, you know, inebriated because of the drink. Says it's all bullshit. Her relationship with Steve, their love, they're pretending, and there's maybe some truth to that. You know, maybe they are putting on a certain show to hide what has gone down with them in the last year and what's gone down in general. But obviously it's exaggerated because of her being drunk, so you definitely feel bad for Steve. So it's actually a good scene, even though you might say it's there just to force a bit of a rift between them. But it's a good scene, it's well played, it's obviously quite entertaining, quite cringe, like she's funny in it, but it also feels like a realistic sort of dispute between them. You then get a strange beat where Jonathan ends up taking Nancy home and puts her in bed, sees like her and Steve together and doing that awkward thing again, but he does take her home later. But a good scene anyway. The other big drama this episode is, of course, with Will, and with his continuing sort of trauma and struggling to come to terms with things, struggling to process things. His drawings continue to happen in this episode. They become more vivid. He draws like the monster. He draws obviously like the storm clouds and the whole thing, which he saw on the night in question, and it makes people around him and Will himself start to question, are these real? Did I really see that, or are they just, you know, visions that have come to me? And he opens up to Mike about it, but we see this happen in the middle of when they're like trick-or-treating with the gang, that it comes to Will in a vision, and he just has a breakdown, and Mike like takes him home because Mike's just like had enough anyway. He's done because of the whole Max thing. So yeah, he takes him down. So we get quite a nice scene with Will and Will and Mike, where Mike's just there and listening, and Will sort of starts slowly to open up about this stuff. So that's obviously going to become a thing with him developing, and we get another nice little fun sort of cliffhanger. And this time I think just it's a little more light-hearted because Dustin comes home at the end of the night, and something's rustling about in his dustbin, and what a great final shot and line, because he opens the lid and the final sort of shot is him looking in, and the final line is "holy shit," something like that, and it cuts to credits, and we get the Ghostbusters thing over the end credits. So very good stuff. I like that a lot. Great ending to the episode, and a really fun episode. I also like the whole squabble during the episode between Mike and Lucas about who's going to be Venkman, and Mike's saying, well, we've planned this for months that I'll be Venkman, and Lucas is like, well, why can't there be two Venkmans? And of course they give him Winston, and he sort of says, well, no one wants to be Winston, he was late to the game for a start, and he almost calls like Mike racist, because it's like, well, you're just giving the black kid like the Winston character, and it sort of saying you can't have two like Winstons or whatever. It's like, well, why not? Because he's black, sort of thing. So that's great stuff. But that's Stranger Things, episode 2 of the second season, chapter 2. I should be back with another review tomorrow, so let me know your thoughts of this one in the comments below. Like and subscribe as always. Support me on Patreon, patreon.com/borednow. But I'll be back with more Stranger Things soon. Thanks for listening, guys.
Strange in your neighborhood, who you gonna call? Ghostbusters! If there's something weird and it don't look good, who you gonna call? Ghostbusters! I ain't afraid of no ghosts.
Bullshit. Let's party, huh? Party, we're partying. This is bullshit. Bullshit.